When asked the question, what scares you the most, it's easy to jump to the most insane concepts imaginable. Killer clowns, dilapidated mental asylums, getting arrested on multiple counts of tax fraud. I get that one's a little specific, but stay with me, I promise I'm going somewhere. What I'm getting at is the mind never runs out of fuel for the ever-burning fire that is irrational fear. Horror games are where a lot of these fears take shape, but what happens when instead of forcing you to face monsters beyond your comprehension, a game forces you to confront the horrors present in your everyday life? Well, I'll give you a hint. Insound Mind is a psychological horror game that caught my eye for a few reasons. The first one being this trailer on Steam showcasing a bunch of people having fun playing it, and you can have one of two reactions to trailers like this. Either you go, there's no way they're actually having fun playing this game, I'm not trying it. Or you say, wow, that looks really fun, let me try it. Being the sophisticated schizophrenic that I am, I had both reactions, so $35 worth of entertainment swiftly made its way to my PC monitor instead of my dinner table. The game begins in this creepy basement where I quickly came to the realization that I'm terrified of horror games. But at this point, I was $35 too deep, so continuing was my only option. And in case you're like me, meaning you realize things too late, I'm about to spoil the entire game, so if creepy basements interest you, you should probably go play the game first. Getting into the plot of this game, you find out you're playing as this small town therapist named Desmond Wales. Desmond, partly due to his profession, has the severe problem of not minding his own damn business, and you will soon see how this lands him in a shitload of situations he shouldn't be in. But I guess, as a therapist, it kind of is your business to be in other people's business. So, to some extent,
What is blood yapping about?
a large part of the game takes place within this building, which turns out not to be a building at all, but instead is Desmond's mind. However, this becomes even more complicated when the minds of all his patients seem to be linked to his own. Would you believe that's not even something you start the game knowing? You literally don't find this out until like the end. I just think it's easier to explain the plot this way. Desmond's practice is located in Milton Haven, a small city where nothing happens until, nah, I'm not gonna do that to you. I just needed some excuse to change the music. Milton Haven is where Desmond performs the frowned on dark art that is therapy. During the sessions that he holds with his patients, he records their conversations using cassette tapes to study later. These tapes are essentially mind excerpts where Desmond's patients attempt to work past their existing mental issues. Therefore, it's only normal that each tape is rife with all kinds of mental anguish, including more severe topics like self-harm and domestic violence. But then again, does it even qualify as a horror game without a little bit of domestic violence? The pre-recorded sessions with each patient act as a gateway into their psyches and serve as Desmond's guide when traversing these metaphysical spaces that represent each patient's mind. And there's a talking cat that helps. The main gameplay narrative is driven by these spaces that come to be known as the collective unconscious. I did not make that up, that's the actual name, they actually say that, the collective unconscious. You know, during the game, I thought the name was stupid as hell, but it's starting to grow on me. Collective unconscious, it's like a really bad boy band name. The collective unconscious is explained to be the part of every human's brain that holds power over their emotions and behavior which they are not aware of. Because if they were aware, then they'd be conscious. Dumbass. The linking of this part of every human's brain is innate, similar to how every person is gifted with instincts like the fear of snakes. Or, I raise you, the attraction to snake-like women. No, she's not doing anything for you, that's just the me thing? Alright. This inheritance of information usually happens one way, but when a drug known as Agent Rainbow is developed and accidentally ends up in Milton Haven's water supply, you get
Bon voyage!
Yeah, that. I think I've given you more information than the game gave me before playing, so let's talk about the gameplay now. While progressing through each patient's tape, you come across many obstacles in the form of these ink blots and puzzles set up by the game's main antagonist, Agent Rainbow, but like the government agent this time. This is where the psychological horror part of the game really shines, as progressing through tapes feels less like a therapy session and more like this unnerving trial set up by some mastermind who seems to know your every move. Throughout the entire game, you're being stalked by this creepy figure wearing a fedora who knows every detail of Desmond's personal life. This personification of Agent Rainbow within Desmond's mind invokes a profound feeling of paranoia while playing. It becomes frightening to complete simple tasks like reading notes and retrieving creepy dolls because of the ever-looming threat that the Benadryl Hatman can show up to turn your normal situation into a dire one. Battling this omnipresent threat is akin to fighting an evil version of you. Yes, technically it is an even playing field with there being no clear difference aside from the morals and values that set you apart from them, but it's those same morals and values that give them the advantage in this case. In some ways, they become the most powerful version you can be. a version of you free from social constructs and societal obligations that you burden yourself with. There's nothing they can't or won't do, and no links they won't go to if it means defeating you, and for that reason, they become a force you never want to be on the opposing side of. I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here. Let's get back into the gameplay. The main gameplay loop revolves around jumping into each patient's mind and combating the monstrous form Rainbow manifests itself as within their unconscious. And I know, not too long ago I said, but what happens when instead of forcing you to face monsters beyond your comprehension? And while I technically lied about the monster part, I didn't lie about the comprehension piece. These monsters are what each patient thinks society sees them as, and is ultimately what their fears and insecurities form into once being exacerbated by Agent Rainbow. That being said, it's not difficult to see how each person becomes what they are desperately trying to run away from. And in some ways, that's the scariest part of this game, as all the victims appear to genuinely want to change and start to finally make progress during their therapy sessions before being consumed by factors they have no control of. Completing each patient's tape requires you to overcome their monster, generally following the structure of avoiding them while you acquire the means to confront them directly. This game adopts the standard first-person survival horror experience that is, looting and shooting in the dark. However, as you progress through the story, you acquire tools that allow you to interact with the world more than just shooting shady characters in the face. The key to conquering a specific tape's monster lies within the tape itself, in the form of an object from the corresponding patient's past. These items were always impossible for me to predict, ranging from a mirror shard to something you probably can't pass airport inspections with. But instead of only being the solution to one patient's problem, each tool becomes synonymous with the person liberated by using it. By Desmond collecting these tools, he's also collecting the shattered pieces of each patient's mind, tying into the idea of a collective pool of unconsciousness. The past trials and tribulations of those who fought before him allow Desmond to succeed where they failed, and prepares him for his own inner conflict. This game features 5 bosses in total, with the final boss being the multicolored man himself. During this fight, all your previous encounters come into play as you battle against scary Rainbow Hat Man for control over your mind. I found this fight to be enjoyable, centered around rewriting every patient's tape of trauma with a testimony of their progress. The fight concludes with Desmond accepting Rainbow as a part of himself, along with the insecurities and trauma that he represents. Once you've completed this tape, you're granted access to Desmond's mind room, a part of his unconscious where you learn details of his failed relationship due to emotional unavailability and the shocking death of his talking cat Tanya. For the first time during this game, the feeling of paranoia lifts, and it seems that Desmond has finally taken time to evaluate his own mental state instead of those he crosses paths with due to his career, prompting him to expose the government development of Agent Rainbow alongside one of his surviving patients. Now for the question at hand. Why do I think you should play this game? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but instead of listing them out, I think it'd actually be easier to focus on another question. The scariest part of this game, in my opinion, is how every character has the exact same problem. I'm not talking about unproductive therapy or shady government drug scandals, although maybe I should be, those are pretty massive issues. The question I want to focus on is, how do you think society sees you? In Sound Mind is a game that tackles the ever-present issue that is the yearning for societal acceptance. There's a lot of science behind why we as humans have this want in the first place, but I'm sure you've heard all about the primitive traits people have already, so I'll skip the history lesson. Bottom line is, everyone struggles with this, some more than others, and Desmond alongside his patients are prime examples of what this can fester into. Desmond constantly questions his worth as a therapist, as a partner, and as a person while playing, but instead of searching within himself and coming to terms with internal conflicts he faces, he evaluates how good of a human he is through his clients' lives. To be clear, there's nothing wrong with helping others. I think it's actually one of the things that makes someone a quote-unquote good person. But no matter how many good deeds you do for others or how willing you are to help those around you, they will never see you the way you see yourself. For better or worse, the only opinion that matters about your life, your art, and your image is yours alone. I like to say I've mastered this being the amazing YouTuber that I am, but that's not at all true. The act of loving one's self-image is a constant balancing act. There's no such thing as putting away your insecurities for good, and it can be especially crushing when those insecurities are perceived in a negative way by those around you. This concept of searching for one's self-worth in the eyes and minds of others is why I say you should give this game a chance. With the entire cast being broken in some way, there's no telling whose past might resonate with you, and seeing their struggles could help you sort through your own. I'm Clutch, and I make stuff like this all the time now. If silly game reviews broken up by deep discussions interest you, consider subscribing and checking out some of the other stuff I make. Or you could, just go to therapy.